you on now to our weekly literary corner, Korea Book Club, where we take a look at some notable Korean works available in an English translation and beyond. Joining me for that is our literary critic, Barry Welsh, who has joined us now in the studio. Barry, hello. It's great to see you as always.
Yes, good evening, Janko.
Okay, so what do you have in store for us this week?
So this evening we're reviewing a short story called Beauty Looks Down on Me by Eun Heekyung and translated by Sora Kim-Russell. And the Korean title is 아름다움이 나를 멸시한다. And it was originally published in Korean in 2007. And then the English translation, this translation has been published at least twice. It was first published in 2008 in Volume 2 of the Azalea Journal of Korean Literature and Culture. And then again, it was published in 2017 as a title story in a collection of Eun Heekyung's short stories published as part of the Dalki Archive Library of Korean Literature. And Eun is actually extremely popular here in Korea. She's got 6 short story collections and 4, very highly regarded novels. She's won a string of the big literary awards in the country, the Munhak Dongne Award, the Isang Award, and so on. However, she's not as well known to English readers, and certainly not as well known as some of her contemporaries like Shin Kyung-suk or Gong Ji-young. So today's story, Beauty Looks Down on Me, it's a great entry point, I think, to Eun's work. And it tells the story of a young man, a youngish man, struggling with weight loss and suffering from abandonment issues.
Right, when we say abandonment issues, I understand we're talking about the protagonist's struggles to cope with an absent father.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, although Beauty Looks Down on Me was initially written in 2007, it seems to have been quite forward-thinking. Mm-hmm. I mean, single-parent families and unrealistic body expectations, even for men, especially in this age of social media, have both become quite prevalent social talking points and issues. So then how does Eun tackle these issues, and what does she have to say about them?
Right, yes. So just like you say, reading this story, it's impossible not to think about, some of those discussions and, debates about body image in Korea and, of course, elsewhere as well. It's a much remarked upon phenomenon of our times that social media has been a driver of depression in young people. We have all these studies that show an ever-increasing number of youths that have, body image issues. And like you mentioned, this story has a very predictive element because it was published just as social media was really beginning to take off. And the issues that it talks about, I think, have been exacerbated in the decade and a half since. And this story shows someone struggling with these negative feelings about their appearance. The unnamed narrator in the story wants to lose weight. Ever since he was a young boy, he's been quite significantly overweight, and this has been a great source of depression and anxiety. And as a result, he's developed quite low self-esteem. As a man now in his 30s, he decides, much to the surprise of his friends and his co-workers and family members, that he's going to try and go on a diet. Will he succeed?
Right, so this is understandably a very sensitive topic for many people. How does then Eun depict this young man's struggles with weight and his attempts at weight loss?
Well, this is the most compelling aspect of the story. We get an insight into how he thinks about his weight, and that it's constantly something that he has to think about as he moves through his days in the office or on public transport, in restaurants, when he's with his friends or his family and his co-workers. He's constantly aware, or he's made to be aware, of his physical presence in the world, how he's judged by the people around him. And for example, there's some very sort of insightful moments where he talks about the shame that he feels using public transport. He says, it was true that every time I took a seat on a bus, I was careful not to touch the person sitting next to me. Several times I'd been unable to bear the misunderstanding of some young woman and got off the bus before my stop. Then later, he talks about how challenging it is just to shop for clothes, something that many people take for granted. And for him, this isn't something you can take for granted. He says, what's far more uncomfortable is the fact that we can't do anything without being noticed. One of the major advantages of online shopping is that a fat person can shop for extra large clothes or a scale without feeling like everyone is staring at them. And these details, it's very convincing and realistic, and I feel it gives some genuine insight into the experience this young man's having. And it's the slow, steady accumulation of these unwanted stares and comments and moments of shame that finally convince him to embark on his diet.
Right, societal microaggressions, should we say.
Right.
But at the same time, it's interesting, they're perhaps heightened. He's perhaps heightened to those concerns because of his own low self-esteem as well.
Yeah.
So then how does he find this journey to lose weight, particularly in how he sees the world respond to his attempts?
Right, yes, so this is another strong point of this story. I think Eun does a very good job of this. So we see how the world reacts to him, and the world doesn't react kindly at times. He's doubted by everyone around him. It's almost as if people don't want him to change or succeed. They don't understand why he's doing it, it seems. And when he starts to only eat specific foods or avoid other foods, people again judge him and mock his efforts, and he has to endure this experience as well. We see how he becomes a topic of conversation and gossip in his office. People speculate openly in front of him about whether he'll succeed or not. Even his mother questions his motives and tempts him with food that he says that he can't eat, he doesn't want to eat. And again, it's this challenge of this experience. It seems very real and quite nuanced, and it's very affecting.
Yeah, even just talking about it is making me feel uncomfortable and quite stressed as well.
Right, yeah.
You mentioned at the beginning that the narrator is also dealing with abandonment issues. How does that factor into the story?
Right, well, we learn at the beginning of the story that his father left him and his mother. It's not exactly spelled out what's happened, but it seems like his conception was a mistake. It was possibly the result of a one-night stand, and his father, who was maybe more upper class in some way or more wealthy or privileged than his mother, was already married and eventually cut ties with him and his mother. And for the narrator, for this young man who was, I think, 12 years old at the time, this becomes connected to his weight as well. He's convinced that his father abandoned him because of his weight. And he says, at the beginning, he says, if I'd been one of those clever, innocent kids, he'd have been the tragic hero. But a fat kid who looks stupid and grumpy all the time could never amount to anything more than a reminder of his past mistake, his one moment of folly. And this is also very sensitively and realistically depicted in the story. This, he feels like he was abandoned, and he has these very negative or complicated feelings towards his father. But these are all wrapped up with his low self-esteem. And so in his determination to free himself from one of these issues, he perhaps also frees himself from the other one too, or is at least on the path to freeing himself from it. This is, at times, it's a very dark story. There's some things in the story that we haven't mentioned. It is quite a dark story with quite a pessimistic view of human nature at times, but it isn't a story that's completely without hope, and it does, I think, ultimately show that it is possible to move on from the things that scar us in our youth and the things that are affecting the way we think about our appearance. And as I've mentioned, it's sensitive and nuanced depiction of someone who's unhappy with their appearance, and then the difficult struggle that they endure in that process of trying to change it.
Yeah, I think that key word there, scar, leaving a lasting impression even once the wounds are healed over. It sounds like quite an affecting story. Once again, it's called A Beauty Looks Down on Me by Eun Heekyung. Right, that was our pick for this week's club. Barry, thank you for introducing us to that work, and we'll see you again next time. Have a great week.
Okay, take care.